What's going on today, guys? I have a little bit of a different video yet again. So today I wanted to talk about fascial-driven athletes versus more like muscular-driven athletes. So there's quite a big difference between just having a bunch of muscle and being athletic. This is something I've been thinking about recently. I've always liked playing sports growing up and doing that sort of thing. And then around when I was like 18, 19, I got more into lifting weights, calisthenics, doing all this. And you realize there is a fundamental difference between how you train for sports and how you train for aesthetics or weightlifting. There's so many different like sub variants of it, but to break down a couple off the top of my head, you got like for the gym side of things, weightlifting in terms of bodybuilding and powerlifting are kind of the two main sects of that. So it's either trying to get the physique you want and put on as much muscle as you want. Depending if you're doing this naturally or enhanced, obviously this will change how you're going to look and what you should do for training, which is like a whole entire video on itself. I don't think if you're natural, you should be training the same as enhanced people, just because your recovery is going to be so much worse. It's going to be so much slower. And you really have to keep in mind all this stuff. And then if you are enhanced, you need to make sure your tendons are growing at a similar rate or recovered enough instead of like just the muscles, but caveat for another video. And then powerlifting. You can usually do a bit of both, and honestly that's probably the best approach. Because what I've noticed is to get the type of physique you want, it usually involves hitting a certain multiplier of your body weight for all these different exercises. Like for me, I prefer more stable exercises so I don't have to factor in stability into it. So I can just focus on pushing as much weight through the muscle as possible to be able to grow it as efficiently as I can, right? So instead of doing a barbell squat, I might do a Smith machine squat. Or instead of doing a bench press or an incline bench press, I'll do a Smith machine incline bench press. This way it takes a lot of strain off my rotator cuffs and back and stuff, so I don't have to focus on stabilizing. I can just focus on going up and down and just pushing as much force through the bar as possible. But this is the first segment that I was talking about, kind of bodybuilding and powerlifting, versus the more fascial-driven athletes for athletic performance. So think of someone like Noah Lyles, the sprinter, or Ja Morant, the NBA basketball player. Neither of these two guys are super muscular, but yet they're some of the best at what they do. Ja has one of the highest vertical jumps in the NBA. Noah Lyles is one of the fastest humans alive, right? So why is that, right? Have you ever asked yourself, if someone who's a lot more muscular with the potential to produce so much more force is still so much slower or not able to jump as high as these two athletes that are still in shape and very athletic, don't get me wrong, and can probably move more weight than the average person, but they're by no means like bodybuilder built, right? So I've been doing a lot of research on this recently because this has fascinated me quite a lot, but what I've found is it comes down to a couple of things. So like the alignment to your body. Usually if you're going heavy into the powerlifting and bodybuilding, you tend to develop imbalances if you're not doing it correctly. Like if you're doing like a deadlift with one hand over top, one hand on bottom, like a hook grip, it's going to develop imbalances in your traps and, different parts of your hips and all that. Or if you're, you have just one weaker side, you just naturally like just sleep on one side all the time, or you always sit a certain way, this is going to develop natural imbalances. And if you just add weight to this and don't address any of these imbalances, you're just going to get stronger on the good side and weaker on the bad side proportionally, right? This is just a natural thing that happens. And obviously this affects the athlete as well, or the more fascia-driven person. But that is like the first thing that comes to mind is you want to address any imbalances. And then it goes down to the plantar fascia. So it goes from your feet all the way to the top of your head, right? So it's the kind of muscle or like the tissue underneath the muscle between the bones that kind of sends like the nerve pathways to your brain that kind of goes back and forth to activate it. So a good example of this is having like a high arch in your foot, right? Having a strong arch in your foot usually means you're more of a fascial-driven athlete, where being more kind of like posterior chain or glute dominant versus quad dominant. And this is going to lead to you being more explosive or being more fast twitch is how most people describe it. Let's think about sprinting. This is very fast twitch, or jumping, right? Very fast ground contact time to be able to generate the force as quickly as possible, to spring up as high as you can. So a couple things, your body has to work in a chain, right? So it goes from your feet to your calves, to your hamstrings, to your glutes, to your back, and then your hands, right, with the momentum. It all works as a system. But what happens in bodybuilding, if you're not addressing some of these weak points, or maybe addressing some of these exercises that are less common, like a lower back extension or a good morning, you may be missing part of the gap that is responsible for the athleticism, or calves as well. I know a lot of you guys are skipping calves out there. I mean, I've been guilty of this too. I'll train them like consistently for a little bit, then usually stop. But right now I'm getting back into it with the calves, and I'm testing out this new theory of mine. So I don't know if you've heard of someone's ideal physique is like having certain amounts of symmetry, right? Like having identical neck size to arm size to calf size. And then, everything else is just like a multiple of itself. Like your waist needs to be this much bigger than your chest and all this. The most common one is the shoulder to waist ratio. And it's one of the most determining traits of, how athletic you are, how fit you are, or how attractive you are perceived to other people. So all these benefits, right, by keeping things in symmetry and in check, which will usually just happen more or less naturally if you're just working out everything. You're not going to develop like too big of a midsection or anything that I've noticed, but everyone's genetics are different, so each their own. But the main point of this is there's a multiplier for each muscle of your body to get it the way you want it for a quote-unquote like mathematically like ideal physique. So for instance, if you wanted to get like the ideal calves for your physique, you probably need to do like 2 times or 3 times your body weight for like 5 or 10 reps. And if you have that strength, then your calves have no choice but to grow. And it's the same with every muscle, like your arms, your chest, your back. Nothing is really exempt from this, right? Like if you can bench press 4 plates on each side, 405, there's no chance you're not going to have a big chest. If you can deadlift, 5 plates, 500 pounds, no chance you're not going to have big hamstrings and a strong back. And the same goes for everything. If you can squat, 4 plates, you're going to have big quads. If you can do a pull-up with half your body weight attached and extra weight, there's no chance you're not going to have a big back. This was a realization that took me a long time to figure out for more bodybuilding and powerlifting specifically. If you can just hit these multipliers of your body weight for these exercises, these kind of arbitrary goals that you set for yourself as benchmarks to and make it more fun, gamify it, you are going to get the physique you want. But then the part that's left out is just because you have the strength doesn't mean that you actually have the power, the elasticity required for athleticism, or the full kind of kinetic chain of your body working together. So let's say you had like a lower back injury. Like I hurt my back like maybe my 2nd year into lifting, squatting too heavy. So you have that little tweak, and now all of a sudden, whenever you kind of take damage to your body, it's like a breaker switch is like flicked off, right? So you lose a bit of that mind-muscle connection with it, and you need to reestablish it through, doing lighter weight or rehab, whatever you need to kind of get that sorted out. So then for any of these injuries that you have that are like lagging or nagging injuries, you need to address these to get the full Kinetic Chain to be able to really tap into all your athleticism. Because you can have all the power in the world, right? Think of someone like Larry Wheels, like one of the strongest humans alive. But if you were to ask him to, run a kilometer or a mile, he would probably struggle just because he has like so much weight on his frame. It's like being obese, right? You can be muscularly obese. It doesn't just have to be like fat obese. You can have too much muscle. Your BMI does not care if it's muscle or fat. It's just more mass on your body than your natural genetics allow, essentially. So to kind of tie this all up, and the point I'm getting at is you need different types of training other than just lifting weights if you want to have more of a holistic approach. You should be doing like a little bit of stretching or a little bit of like activation exercises for like your rotator cuffs. a lot of these exercises that just get skipped. Personally, I'm a fan of like weighted stretching, so you don't have to, so it's not as boring, right? It's more of like an exercise, doing it for reps rather than, just like isometric time holds. That's another thing that's really important for athleticism, is being able to do all these isometrics. And it's pretty much just being able to develop more power, right? Like lifting weights is more strength based, or if you're going for more muscle mass, more hypertrophy, if you're just lifting just to gain more like literal mass on your body. And then isometrics and different exercises to increase your athleticism, like jumping, sprinting, hopping, any of this stuff, are weighted with all these variations, box jumps, etc. All this is going to help you be able to tap into more of that strength that you've built over here. And you can't really train everything at once. Like, it's hard to be like a renaissance man, I guess, of the different like gym, lifting, athleticism spaces, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, if you just have different kind of periods of training different things, you're going to be pretty well rounded. So all I'm saying is, if you've never tried to do like an athletic block where maybe you do more explosive stuff, some jumping, some isometrics, could be worth a try. And then if you're on the other side, if you're coming from more of a sports background, if you've never tried to do any of the weightlifting or the powerlifting, there's so much benefits to that too. So if you're not doing either, you're leaving a lot on the table for how good you can actually feel, for how healthy you can be, and actually get closer to achieving your genetic potential, right? If you think about a couple 100 years ago, like no one was just lifting weights, or no one was just doing this. They were probably like fighting with swords or something to defend the village. Maybe that was more like 1,000 years ago. But anyways, it's my little rant for today. I don't know, let me know if you guys like these types of videos. Want to get into making more gym content. I'm just trying to get used to talking in front of the camera and just being consistent with it. Don't always have something planned out, but if you guys like more of the structured videos where I have like a script and kind of reading off that, let me know too, because I enjoy making all these. But with that being said, remember, take consistent action on your main thing and don't stop. Peace.